The dawn of the nuclear age promised unlimited power and a strange kind of peace, maintained by the threat of mutual destruction. But behind the glowing control panels and Cold War bravado lies a terrifying truth. Humanity has come far closer to accidentally destroying itself than most people will ever know. From the deserts of America to secret bunkers deep within Russia, tiny mistakes, faulty circuits, and pure bad luck have nearly triggered global annihilation. These are the true chilling stories of the nuclear accidents that almost ended the world. Our first story begins in 1961 over the quiet, unsuspecting farmland of North Carolina. A U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber was on a routine flight, carrying 2 hydrogen bombs. Each of these weapons was more than 250 times more powerful than the one dropped on Hiroshima. Suddenly, a severe fuel leak caused the massive bomber to break apart in mid-air. As the plane disintegrated, both bombs were released, falling toward the ground. One bomb's parachute deployed correctly, and it drifted down, landing relatively gently in a muddy field. The other, however, plummeted toward the earth, slamming into the ground at high speed. As it fell, its arming sequence began. When military investigators finally located and unearthed the bomb, what they found sent a shockwave through the Pentagon. Of the 6 safety switches designed to prevent an accidental detonation, 5 had already failed. Only a single, tiny, low-voltage switch, a simple electrical connection, had stopped a 4-megaton explosion from occurring on American soil. Years later, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara would admit, by the slightest margin of chance, literally the failure of 2 wires to cross, we missed a nuclear catastrophe. If that last fragile switch had flipped, a significant portion of the East Coast, from Washington, D.C. to New York City, could have been wiped from the map, engulfed in a radioactive fireball. The world had just dodged a bullet, but it wouldn't be the last time. 2 decades later, on the other side of the Iron Curtain, another near disaster was unfolding. This time, it wasn't a mechanical failure in the sky, but a crisis of judgment deep inside a Soviet command bunker. It was the night of September 26, 1983. The Cold War was at its absolute peak, simmering with tension just weeks after the Soviets had shot down a Korean passenger jet. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov was the duty officer, monitoring the Soviet Union's early warning satellite system. Suddenly, the alarms began to scream. The computer screen flashed a word that froze everyone in the room. Launch! The system was reporting that 5 American intercontinental ballistic missiles were hurtling toward the Soviet Union. According to strict military protocol, Petrov's job was clear. He was supposed to immediately report it up the chain of command as a confirmed attack. Moscow would have had only minutes to decide, and the only logical response would have been a full-scale nuclear retaliation. Within the hour, hundreds of cities across the globe could have simply vanished. But Petrov hesitated. Something felt wrong. He trusted his gut more than the machine. If the United States really wanted to start a war, he reasoned, they wouldn't fire only 5 missiles. It was an all-or-nothing game. Firing just a handful made no strategic sense. Against all protocols, he made a decision. He reported it to his superiors as a false alarm, a system malfunction. He was right. An investigation later revealed that the satellites had mistaken the sun's reflection off high-altitude clouds for the heat signature of missile launches. Stanislav Petrov's calm, logical decision, made under unimaginable pressure, may have single-handedly saved the world from a nuclear holocaust. But not every threat came down to human judgment. Sometimes it was just a simple machine malfunction that brought the world to the brink. On November 9, 1979, deep inside the North American Air Defense Command, NORAD, the heart of America's defense system, radar screens suddenly lit up. They showed hundreds, then thousands, of Soviet missiles speeding toward the United States. It looked like the ultimate doomsday scenario. Within minutes, bomber pilots were scrambling to their jets, engines roaring to life. Nuclear missile crews were put on high alert, awaiting the final launch codes. The U.S. President's Emergency Command Center, an airborne plane known as the kneecap, was notified. The world was seconds away from a full-scale retaliatory strike. Then, confusion began to spread through the command center. While the radar screens were screaming Armageddon, the satellite data showed Nothing. The skies were clear. The truth, when it was finally uncovered, was almost unbelievable. A technician had accidentally loaded a training simulation tape into the live operational computer system. The highly realistic, simulated Soviet attack was being read by NORAD's computers as a real one. A simple human error had nearly tricked the United States into starting an actual nuclear war. In the aftermath, NORAD completely redesigned its systems, creating an entirely separate network for simulations to ensure such a mix-up could never happen again. But the close call left the Pentagon and the world shaken for decades. Just a year later, in 1980, the danger wasn't from a computer glitch or a faulty satellite, but from a simple hand tool. In Damascus, Arkansas, a maintenance crew was working inside a Titan II missile silo. This was a massive reinforced concrete bunker holding one of the most powerful nuclear weapons ever built, a 9-megaton warhead. During a routine procedure, a young airman accidentally dropped a heavy socket wrench. It fell 80 feet down the silo, striking the side of the missile and puncturing its fuel tank. Immediately, highly toxic and explosive rocket fuel began to spray out, filling the silo with a deadly invisible gas. Technicians in protective suits rushed to contain the situation, but it was a losing battle. Hours later, the fuel vapors ignited. A colossal explosion ripped through the facility, blowing the 740-ton silo door off its hinges and launching the 9-megaton nuclear warhead hundreds of feet into the air. It landed in a ditch nearby. Miraculously, the warhead's own safety features held. It didn't detonate, but the explosion killed one airman, injured 21 others, and completely destroyed the billion-dollar military site. It was a terrifying, visceral reminder that in the world of nuclear weapons, even the smallest mistake, a dropped tool, a moment of carelessness, could escalate into a global disaster. The line between safety and catastrophe was, and still is, terrifyingly thin. These incidents are not just relics of a bygone era. They are stark warnings from our recent past. What other close calls have remained classified? What other single points of failure are waiting in silos or on submarines around the world? The stories you've just heard are only the beginning. Thank you for watching. If you found this look into our hidden history as fascinating and frightening as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss part 2, where we uncover even more nuclear accidents that almost changed the world forever.